aimed at those on low and middle income. And this water tax is the final straw for many families. People who would never have thought of protesting have joined tens of thousands of others, taken to the streets against you and your government. And the government, rather than listen, has dismissed their concerns. And part of the anger and the rejection of the government's proposals around the water tax, which, initially was a Fianna Fáil idea, comes from the instinctive understanding among Irish people that water is the most basic of resources. And many rural dwellers, people who have to sink their own wells and pay for that, or people who are part of group schemes, have paid for water for a very long time indeed. And they understand, as do urban dwellers, that water is very basic. We use it to cook, to wash, to drink. We also know in the history of this state that successive governments have objectively failed to properly manage or exploit natural resources for the benefit of Irish citizens. They've either been underutilised or sold off to private and foreign interests. And the most notorious recent example of this was the disgraceful squandering of our national gas rights. So there is a deep and widespread view, which I share, that the metering of domestic water and the imposition of water charges and the establishment of Uisce Éireann is all about setting up the state's water services for privatisation. The belief is that the ultimate aim is to eventually privatise water supply. And this process has already unfolded previously with Eircom and more recently the establishment of Bord Gáis, which was simply a precursor to selling off that important public asset. In Sinn Féin's view, and I think of a view of an increasing number of people out there, of thinking people, it makes no sense to throw away decades of state investment through these type of sale-offs. And any move, one would presume, to privatise water would ensure even higher water charges for consumers than those that the government is already contemplating. In the north, Sinn Féin has prevented the introduction of water charges and the privatisation of the water services. We did that in the face of a British Tory party diktat. So this bill, the Constitutional Amendment Bill, allows for a referendum to retain control of water services in public ownership. Now, why should the government be afraid of that? Why not give the citizens, why not give the people their say? It seeks to enshrine access to clean water in the Constitution and to protect this for future generations. The European Commission has already received the European Citizens' Initiative on the right to water. This contained 2 million signatures urging the EU to implement the human right to water and sanitation. And over 90% of citizens in Italy and in Greece voted in referendums to ensure that water privatisation schemes would not be implemented. And the Netherlands passed a law in 2004 banning private sector provision of water supply. So I listened to the Taoiseach. He hasn't given a satisfactory explanation of the government's reluctance to hold a referendum on water ownership. And as Teachta Stanley has said, Labour TDs here on record supporting this principle. Labour Seanadóirí voted for this in the Seanad. And if, as the government says, there are no plans for the privatisation of Irish water, then why don't they fully support this bill? The Taoiseach, interestingly enough, in response to a question from me earlier today, said he would reject the bill, that the government is against the bill, and he said it had implications for private property rights. I am sure the Minister is aware of the words of Padraig MacPeirs in The Sovereign People, when he wrote that no private right to property is good as against the public right of the nation. And surely there is no more appropriate application of that sentiment than to the right of citizens to guaranteed access to something as basic as water. This Sinn Féin bill is about making the import of Pearse's words a reality, and I urge all TDs to support it.
Now calling Deputy Keevin O'Callaghan. The Deputy has 5 minutes.